Hello and welcome back to my garden. Today we're going to be looking at some of my winners and losers of the 2024 season. And overall, I'd have to say this season was disappointing. Things didn't work out quite the way I had hoped and or planned. And that's just the nature of gardening, I think. So let's start with the winner here. And that would be this. My wife planted up these, I believe these are petunias here. Way back in the spring, I believe it was mid to late spring. And though they look a little, well, they're a little ratty side right now, they've just been pumping out flowers constantly. I think these are all proven winners. And they've just been putting out a show of pink, these beautiful pink flowers all season long. It's crazy. They've put up with tropical storms, immense heat, droughts, and they just keep going. That being said, let's look at something that didn't quite work out the way I'd hoped. This is one of my two front garden beds, and this is a bit of a disappointment. Things happened here that I didn't want to happen here, i.e. a ton of weeds. In fact, back in the back, you can probably see these little white flowers. That's a weed. It's wild garlic, I believe. And it pops up this time of year, fall, and then it pops up again into the spring, and it's annoying as all heck. But that's not the worst of it. I have various other weeds and grasses. This is a grass right here. I'm just noticed. I don't know if I can get, yeah, I can get that out now. So there's grasses in here, and then just, I don't know, this bed I had greater expectations for and hopes for, and certain things, my carnation didn't do so hot this year. Some of the other carnation I planted died out. On the upside, I have a dahlia which is still alive. There's I don't know if you guys can see, there's this beautiful salvia here. I don't know which, it could be bonfire or summer jewel, but it's doing very well, and it just popped up. I don't know where it came from, but it just popped up, and I'm happy it did. Sea holly did quite well this year. I've cut it back. It's not going to reflower till next year, but it survived the year. And right now, I think it's in frame. I have peacock orchid pushing up, and that's going to start flowering over the next few weeks, which is fantastic. But overall, this bed was quite a disappointment. Now, over the winter, I think I'm going to add a border, much as I did to my driveway side bed. If you haven't seen that video, you can go back, watch that video. I put some bricks and I just made a border and it looked nice. And here, this doesn't look nice. And I'm going to fix this over the winter time. And I'm going to try to, well, next year I'll come back and I'll try to do something else in here. The effect I was going for is sort of a mixed plant cottage garden style. But again, it just didn't work out in the end. And like I said, lots of weeds. There's dewberry weeds in here. There's briars. It's a hot mess, but the bushes will get trimmed up in the next probably a couple of months. And some of these other plants, well, we'll see what happens. And there's always next year. Let's go look at the other bed, which was slightly better. Now, this is the other front bed. And my expectations or hopes for this bed this year were a lot higher. And again, cottage style, mixed plantings, and it just didn't quite seem to work out, or it had its moments where it looked fantastic. Right here in front of me, there was the Alaska Shasta Daisy. In fact, a couple of them are starting to, I cut them way back, and now they're starting to reflush, which is great. And they should reflush again for next year. So they'll fill this space and they'll look fantastic. The Agapanthus survived, so that's always a good thing. I have Millennium Onion here, that survived. And I have a few other echinaceas that, again, survived. Calendula in the pot, that survived. It looks terrible now, but I'm pretty sure in the fall, as we get into the cooler temperatures, it's going to start bouncing back. And hopefully I get some nice display out of that. Other things, I had some salvia in here. They died, probably because the space got too wet. When we get torrential downpours, this space tends to flood a bit because the house downspout, it's amazing when it rains here. There's just so much water, the ground can't absorb it as quickly. And again, this space will tend to flood just a little bit. And salvias don't like to have their feet really wet too long. And when we get when we got that one tropical storm or two that passed nearby, it just soaked the area. So they They didn't make it. I have another salvia in the back, which is still hanging in there, and I think I'm going to dig it up and move it this year. I have verbena here, which is just a beast. Verbena will survive pretty much anything. And as you guys know, and behind me here, I transplanted recently, or dug up and divided, many irises. So this space isn't as bad as I think it is, but I think it could always be better. So there's next year, and I'm definitely going to try to make it better next year and get this space really packed out with plants that will hopefully carry me through the entire season. And this way I won't see any of this mulch here. I don't want to see any of this mulch. I want it all be lush and thick and beautiful pretty much all season long. My driveway bed here is a winner because it's pretty much the way I wanted it to be, very lush and thick and filled out. And it's really getting to the point where it's pretty much maxing out so far as plants. But of course, as you see, there's still some mulch that I can see. So next year I'll have to worry about trying to fill some of that in. You may notice the naked ladies underneath the magnolia there. I'm going to have to maybe transplant them next spring, perhaps. We'll see. But overall, as a whole, I'm pretty happy with the driveway bed. I really think it did well this year. And next year, with a little bit of editing, I think it'll be even better. My flower garden this year is probably my biggest disappointment. I think I set my goals and expectations a little too high, and I also didn't spend as much time in here as I would have wanted to. And even if I did, though, that couldn't have fixed some of the things that didn't do so well this year. But of course, there were many things that did succeed in here. So let's take a look at some of the winners and losers in the flower garden. Now, as many of you know, my gladiolus last year were spectacular, but this year, no. And that could be for numerous reasons. Not enough nutrients in the soil. The other issue maybe is overcrowding, because when I planted them within a couple of inches of each other. And of course, each corm puts out new baby corms, and of course they fill out the space. So this year, really no flowers, really disappointing. And I have several large clumps of gladiolus like this one right here. I'm not going to show you each one, that'd be just too boring. But I'm going to try to rectify that by digging up some of these corms this year. And then over the winter time, I'm going to try to, I have a source of horse manure, and allegedly it's well composted. We'll see. But I'm going to get that, and I'm going to try to spread that across all of my beds this year, this winter, and hopefully that will re-energize or reinvigorate anything that's in the ground. And then hopefully something like a gladiolus, which if I'm not mistaken is a pretty heavy feeder, will thrive next year. So that was a loser. But let me show you a winner. Right here, I have my licorice white agastache. Now they got up to 4 foot tall during the peak of the summer. And then of course they don't necessarily die back, but they start going to seed and they start getting just ratty looking. So I give them a cut back. And as you can see now, they're starting to reflush and regrow. That's definitely a winner this year, and I can't wait for their big flush next spring. Back in the back of the bed over here, I have some succulents. I can't remember, sedums. They're sedums, and the deer have eaten them back at least once or twice, but they bounce back. And now they're putting on flower heads, which is looking lovely. And hopefully the deer leave them alone until the season's over. But this isn't their first rodeo, and again, they just keep bouncing back after the deer beat them up. Canna. I don't know the variety, but these canna have just gone bonkers this year. They're bullying the gladiolus that's all around them. In fact, you can't even see the gladiolus, and they're bullying a bunch of other plants. So definitely a winner. They've been through a lot, and they just keep growing and growing, so which is fantastic. But I'm going to dig a lot of this out. I'm going to thin this out. I'll probably give some away to friends, family, relatives, that kind of jazz. But definitely a winner that they just put up with whatever nature throws at them, and they just keep doing their thing. This right here, what remains of my zinnia. This zinnia that the deer aren't supposed to eat, but yet they've nibbled away at. And yeah, disappointed. They keep trying to grow, but the deer keep coming back and having their way with them. So this is going to be a loser. And I'm not going to plant zinnia out in the flower garden next year, I don't think. My Red Hot Poker, absolute world champion in the garden. Although it's not really flowering all that much, and maybe it's just because it's the end of the season, it has been there, it has performed. It's looking a little ratty now, and that's fine. This clump right here, I'm not going to divide for next year, but there is a clump at the front of the house, which I am going to dig up and divide, and I'll bring you guys along for that. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, click that bell icon to be notified when I do post up a new video. This way, hopefully you don't miss me digging up the one Red Hot Poker that's in front of the house and dividing that one up. But definitely a champ. I mentioned this guy in a video recently, I believe. This is my Rose Mint Agastache, and I had another clump that died out elsewhere in the flower garden, but this one is going strong. It's still flowering. The pollinators are absolutely loving it, and I'm pretty happy that it's giving me this late fall or this late summer, early fall color, and hopefully it continues on this way for quite a few more weeks. This here is another one of my winners. This is a Gaura that my wife and I purchased at a local garden center, and this is Whirling Butterflies. This is the second or third time it's flowering. I've lost track. I had cut it back after it. I think when we got it, it was doing a little bit of flowering. A few weeks later, it stopped flowering because it was spent, and I cut it back, and then it reflushed, and I think I may have cut it back again. I can't remember. I'm getting old and senile. But right now, it is looking fantastic, and again, hopefully it continues right on through till the fall. So this one is definitely a winner, and if I'm really lucky, I won't kill it over the winter and it'll bounce back. Right here, we have a Russian sage. I can't remember the variety, but it's in a bottomless pot, meaning there's obviously no bottom to the pot. I cut it out. It's a decorative plastic pot here. And the other thing I did to this pot was I made up tried to make up a very loose mixture of potting soil. So I started off with potting soil, I added an extra perlite, I added in some pine bark, and I added in some gravel just to allow the pot to drain as well as possible, because Russian sage does not like wet feet. And it has done well. It has thrived, and it's growing very well. So hopefully it survives the winter, and next year it fills out the pot to its maximum capacity. Behind it here, I have a red skin dahlia, which has taken off as of late, and it's flowering quite a bit, which is awesome. I'm gonna have to get in here and do some deadheading. And right next to it is a dark opal basil. Now, this dark opal basil dragged its feet for a good portion of the spring and early summer, but it's since taken off. And again, flowering, and the pollinators absolutely love it. My dahlia bed. Absolute disaster this year. Although many of the plants are still growing, I lost quite a few. We had a tropical storm that came through that broke some limbs on some of them, but even before then, they were suffering. I'd made so many mistakes with the plants this year, and I'm not going to get into all of it. I did a whole nother video about that a while ago. But one of the things I am going to do this winter, as I mentioned in the other video, is I'm going to dig up all of these dahlias, which I don't have to do in my growing zone, 8B. I can leave them in ground, but I'm going to dig them all up. I'm going to divide what I can divide, and then I'm going to just re-energize this whole space. I'm going to try to get rid of as many weeds as I can. I'm going to put down a ton of, well, not a literal ton, but I'm going to put down a bunch of manure, again, to re-energize the soil. And I'll probably mix in some of the pine bark mulch that I have down here into the ground to try to create more of a free draining environment for the dahlias, because they do suffer when we get super heavy rains. And hopefully next year, this space will expand into the space behind me, and it'll all just look all that much more incredible come next summer. I hope. That's the plan. That's what we're going with. Let's go over to the rose garden. My rose garden has done pretty well this year. It's gotten nibbled on a little bit by the deer, but that's to be expected. And I've been trying to keep on top of the weeding, which I have kind of under control. It's getting a little out of control now, but hopefully this evening I'll come out here and I'll take care of some of that. But this guy right here is a huge winner, and this is Big Blue Salvia. Now, I saw this on a seed catalog online, something like that, over the winter, and I bought it, and I'm just like, okay, it's a salvia. It's got, you can look at a picture online and let me know if your opinions on this, but you can look at a picture online and go, wow, that's pretty. But then until you actually see the actual plant perform, this guy has been incredible, beautiful. I've already taken cuttings. I'm gonna buy more seeds for next year. It's just a thing of beauty. This is another winner. This one is Blue Victory Salvia. I really enjoy this one too. In fact, I've taken cuttings and I plan on buying more seeds of this one, and I plan on growing this a lot more. And I'm really enjoying it here, and hopefully it survives the winter and it comes back next year. For many of you who've been watching the channel for a few years, you knew I had daylilies out in front of the house, and I still have some there, but they were for the most part getting assaulted pretty much every year by the deer and devoured down. So I moved some of them here into the veg garden behind the fence. And even though it's a low fence, my deer are lazy. If they don't have to jump the fence, they're not jumping the fence. So these daylilies have actually survived and thrived here. Behind me, we have another winner. This purple looking plant right here you see in front of you is a cotton plant. Now, I'm not growing cotton to make my own cotton. No, I'm just growing it for the fun of it. And it survived. The deer haven't eaten it back to the stumps, and it has been flowering and putting on little cotton balls already. So I call this a win. Something horrible happened to my red twig dogwood. I'd moved it from the side of the house where the deer were constantly munching on it, and I put it into this pot here, and it was looking a whole lot better earlier in the year, but now, as you can see, it's looking very rough and terrible. I'm not sure what that is. If you guys have any clues, suggestions, or ideas, please leave the comments below. Various pumpkins, squashes, all dead, dying, look terrible, don't look. My zinnias, these red zinnias are still going for it. I got some purple ones here in the back. They're doing well. And I had some over here behind me, but I think they're kind of giving up the ghost for the year. But that's okay. They all put on a fantastic show this year here in the vegetable garden. And I'm going to call that a win. My lemon tree. It may not look like much, but I have a lot of lemons on my lemon tree. More so than I did last year, I think. Although last year the pot kept falling over and I kept losing lemons due to various reasons. But this year we're looking really good. So I can't wait to harvest. Probably won't be till November, December. It's strange, but that's when you harvest these things. And I think then I will do some trimming and reshaping of this guy a little bit because he's getting all sorts of weird. But nonetheless, it is alive. I haven't killed it, and it's producing lemons. This is a win. My peanuts. This is my first bed of peanuts. I think this is going to be a win. I have a good feeling about this, but it's too soon to tell. Hopefully, I'll be harvesting these in the next few weeks, and we'll see what happens. Turmeric. It's got to be a win. I don't know what the roots look like underneath, but with this much foliage up top, I must have a ton of roots down there. Look at this. This is just crazy. And I think this is from like 6 little root cuttings. Yeah, something like that. And this whole raised bed is pretty much filled with them. So I'm really excited to be harvesting them. I think I harvest them after the first freeze. I'm not sure. I have to go back and do my homework. If you've ever grown turmeric before and have a suggestion when I should harvest it, please leave those comments below. So those are some of the winners and losers I have around the garden. Now, I didn't show you every single plant or every single area. There are many other losers out there. There were some winners, but overall I'm disappointed in the garden itself that it didn't get to where I wanted it to be. And a chunk of that, most of that responsibility falls on myself as a gardener. It's my responsibility to grow and try to make the garden thrive. And there were many mistakes that I made this year, but like every other year, I try to learn from these mistakes and I try to correct what I need to correct for the following year so that the garden is hopefully a little bit better every year. There's a bunch of new subscribers, and if you're still watching at this point, thank you very much for subscribing. It means I'm not standing here talking to myself, because that would be really, really weird. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Click that bell icon to be notified when I do post a new video. I've got bulbs to be planting out. They haven't received any of my bulbs yet. I'll probably get them in October or November. Again, I'm in growing zone 8B, so I get my bulbs later than many of you who are in colder climates actually do. Some of you probably are already getting your bulbs now because you're in much colder climates and you have to get your bulbs into the ground before the ground freezes. My ground here never freezes, which I'm lucky about and unlucky about. Which means I can't really grow tulips, but this year I have wild tulips coming in the mail. So hopefully I can get them planted out November, December, and hopefully they all come up in the springtime. And this spring, cross my fingers and toes, this upcoming spring is, I can't believe we're already talking about the upcoming spring already, but hopefully it'll be just a magical, beautiful display of color throughout the garden This is my hope. This is my dream. That's all I got. Hopes and dreams. There's still things that I want to plant out in the ground now while there's time before we do get freezes. And freezes could kill young tender plants. So I want to get stuff planted in the ground now before those freezes occur. This way they get a good rooting. So there's some of that coming up, and there's a bunch of other different projects coming up, and I'll be touching base back with my cement tile edging that I showed some of you guys about a couple of videos ago. There'll be more of that because I want to give you an update and a progress and actually start putting some of that in the ground probably in the next couple of months. Again, I want to wait till it gets a little bit cooler so I'm not having heat stroke while digging trenches to put my tiles in. So that's going to wrap it up for today. Sophie's inside enjoying the air conditioning. I'm about to go join her. Please check out all the links below, and I'm going to catch you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.